All right, well, we'll start with some introductions. My name is Jim Bennett, and I am a regional support facilitator for DODD. I work in Region 6, which is in the northeast part of the state. Mandy, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Mandy Brooks. I'm also a regional support facilitator, but I work in the opposite side of Jim, down in the Southwest region, so Region 3.
All right, I'll talk to you later. Thanks.
Okay. I'm going to mute everyone just so we make sure that we're able to hear everyone. Couple other folks that I want to introduce. We do have some internal DODD folks with us. Heather Leffler, I see your face there. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Heather Leffler, Cross System Regional Liaison with DODD. Oh, I work in the East Central. I'm sorry. I work in the East Central area, and I have a few counties up in Northeast in Region 6. Sorry, Jim.
You're good. You're good. Heidi?
Hi there, I'm Heidi Davidson, Regional Coordination Manager at DODD, and I cover the eastern side of the state.
Thanks, Heidi. Rachel Roseman?
Hello, I'm Rachel Roseman. I am also, like Mandy and Jim, a regional support facilitator, and I am in the Northwest, so Region 1.
Great. Lindsay Terry Stein, I know, was planning on joining us, but she wasn't able to log in. How about Justin Madison as you sip your coffee there? Perfect timing.
Yes. Justin Madison from Lake DD. I am one of the co-facilitators of the Northern workshops.
Thanks to Justin for joining us. And Lori Martin.
Hi, I'm Lori Martin. I am with the Ross County Board of DD, and I'm one of the co-facilitators for the Southern Ohio Behavior Support Workshops.
Justin, Lori, thank you both for joining us. I know you guys will have an opportunity later to speak to those workshops and tell us a little bit more about them. All right, so we wanted to start off, and again, I know we're recording, but if anyone wants to share some hopes and fears, we did this when we started the OhioISP, sharing some hopes that people had for the OhioISP and some fears that people had when we first started. So we want to do this within the context of the new behavior support rule. So does anyone want to share any hopes that they may have in regard to the new behavior support rule?
You can either unmute and tell us, or feel free to use the chat feature and put it in chat. That'd be great.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mandy.
Yeah.
We'll talk at once. Heidi, Heather, do you guys want to share something? Maybe kickstart this party?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I'm in my car, though. That's why my camera's now off. And
Okay.
Yeah, so my biggest hope with the OhioISP and restrictive measures was that it will be easier for all of the risks that somebody has to automatically carry over from their assessment to their plan, and that the supports for such risks would then be more easily built and interwoven into a person's life from there.
A good one, Heidi. Thank you for sharing that.
And
Heather?
I'm super excited because a lot of times people with restrictive measures often see changes in who is supporting them, changes in providers. And I think the OhioISP is going to offer a lot of continuity as people transition on those journeys in their life. And I just think the information is just going to be richer and more available for teams through the Ohio ISP.
Thank you, Heather. I know we're going to take a look at the job aid during the video. And for those of you who are kind of new to the gatherings here, we always post the video for people to watch in advance. We recognize that people don't always have time to watch in advance. So we're going to start off this gathering with a kind of a brief summary of that video and kind of talk through that job aid. And that job aid kind of shows exactly how the behavior supports the restrictive measure section looks in the Ohio ISP. And I think there's some really good questions there. So, you know, one of my hopes is that those restrictive measures are kind of listed in a way that the individuals receiving services and their family members and the direct support staff can understand. Because essentially it is either the person or their guardian that are consenting to those restrictive measures. So I think it's laid out in a really nice way so that people have the ability to understand those. Any other hopes? What about fears? Any fears related to behavior supports, the new rule, or the Ohio ISP? We've heard some over time, so we know you got them. Like Mandy said, you could pop them in the chat if you wish.
I do think, you know, it would be streamlining the process, making things easier to understand, making sure that we're all using the same language so that providers know what we're asking for and how best to support the person, and families understand the language and it's not talking in, you know, work language, and consistency in the ISP.
Pam, that's a great one. I know in the past we've used a lot of jargon, and it's always been very difficult. So I know one of the foundations of the Ohio ISP was really to get away from that, to make it simpler for people to understand. So that's a really great one there. I see Jessica in the chat had mentioned that the initial Ohio ISP is very time consuming, and we do recognize that it is a big lift for the field, getting all of that rich assessment information into the plan, maybe some questions that have never been asked previously, getting all of that information into the assessment is a big lift initially. We do hope that helps over time, that in time, that information that drives the planning process will help to drive better services and help people live more meaningful lives. And the nice thing about the Ohio ISP is that assessment information will carry over, and it's really just a matter of updating that information as things in a person's life change.
Yeah, Jen, we have Jessica added a comment in the chat that said they're using the Ohio ISP for all plans now. The first one took each SSA more time. However, the SSAs are totally rocking it now. And that's been the consistent message that I've heard from the field, is that, yeah, those first few are tough and time consuming, but as SSAs and Qs become more familiar with the questions and the flow of it, it gets easier, and they're really enjoying getting more valuable information in the plan for the people. So thank you, Jessica, for sharing that.
Yeah, Jessica, keep on rocking it there.
Yes.
All right. Well, appreciate you, those of you who shared. We're going to move to, again, just sort of a brief summary. We don't want to go through everything that we did. I know there's been a statewide behavior support workshop. Heather and Heidi did such a great job of presenting at that. A lot of really good information on the new behavior support rule. So we don't want this to really be a repeat of that information, but we do want to recap some of it just so we can maybe trigger some conversation here and how it relates to the Ohio ISP. Heather, Heidi, I know you're driving. Heather, we had, with the network issues, we had sent you an email like right before asking if it would be okay to go through some of the changes in the behavior support rule.
Sure.
I know there's a form on the behavior support website, which we will share. And then maybe you guys could talk through some of those.
Sure, happy to do that. Sorry I didn't get your email. I've been in back-to-back
No,
meetings
that's
already
okay.
today.
That's all right. I'm gonna pull up the changes, and if we can always tag team this too. So
Okay, so let me make it a little bit bigger for my older eyes.
all right.
So with this rule revision, there's a greater emphasis on the positive measures. Ohio has been doing some incredible work around trauma-informed care and building resiliency, as well as our person-centered planning practices. We are really in a much better place than we've ever been. So the rule just kind of captures that journey and just keeps pushing us forward to keep on making it better for people. The second bullet, this is the heavy lift with this rule update for sure. Significant changes to the new to the definition of chemical restraint. We are now looking at whether a medication causes blunt suppression. And blunt suppression is an individual's inability to complete activities of daily living. It also could be a person is just not responding, engaging in the manner that they typically do. A marked significant difference in somebody's ability to function. And then there's a process called medication reconsideration if we do see that a medication is causing unintended blunt suppression. I could talk about this all day, Jim. I think I see the scrolling, so I'm going to go a little bit faster.
No, it's okay. I guess we get this question a lot, so I know we want to spend some time on it. And it's really not just being the medication causing like someone to become tired or sleepy.
Right.
It's really about kind of knocking them out almost to the point where they can't function at their previous level.
Correct. And for an extended period of time too. The rule allows, we need to see blunt suppression for 30 days. And the purpose of that is because sometimes when we're prescribed new medications, it takes our body 30 days potentially to adjust to that medication. So we didn't want to cloud that process with chemical restraint. So after 30 days, when we do see blunt suppression, whoever sees that reports that to the SSA or the QIDP, and then they take it back to that prescriber, just reporting, the blunt suppression, we're seeing this wasn't intended, what can we do? The prescriber will let the SSAQ know options that are available that will best meet that person's need. Maybe they're adjusting the medication, maybe they're adjusting the schedule. Maybe this is just the best that we can do for this person. And given what we're trying to treat, this is just where we are.
Yeah, and I just wanted to also call out too that this is also this also could be the treatment of sexually offending behavior, because we see that a lot with maybe sex offenders, folks who've had a history of that, males that maybe prescribe some sort of hormone suppression. So things
lots
like
of Depo
that.
shots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it used to be that we didn't consider that a chemical restraint because it had a corresponding DSM-5 diagnosis. This rule, we are not concerned about the DSM-5 diagnosis. We are concerned, is it used for sexual offending? Yes, then it's a chemical restraint. Is the medication bluntly suppressing the person? yes, then that's a chemical restraint.
And Heather, I think you guys have a nice flow chart that is posted on the website. I think Mandy put that in the chat
Great.
for everyone to get to the website, which hopefully that's up with our network issues. But the flow chart is really a good way to kind of tease through what may or may not be a chemical restraint.
Exactly. We just posted that this week. It's on the main page for information. So it should jump out if you have any problems, let us know, because we really want to spread this job aid because it really simplifies this process and gives you. We were thinking of those SSAs who may only encounter this one time, and we want to build confidence and competence. So this job aid will help them through, that thought process. Okay, I feel like I already covered all of that. We've always had prohibited measures. There have been a few changes, a few updates. The prohibited measure of denying snacks and beverages, we added some clarifying information regarding certain diagnoses, for example, Prader-Willi syndrome, as well as polydipsia. For people with those diagnoses, if we don't deny snacks and beverages, it could lead to death, which is serious risk of harm. So we just put that in there because with the last rule update, we had lots and lots of conversations about diagnoses where it didn't quite fit, and so we added that. Another change, electroconvulsive therapy prescribed by a physician to treat a diagnosed medical condition, and it's administered by clinicians in a clinical setting, is allowable now. In the past, that had not been. Conducting assessments, there was one little change, two changes. They just clarified, the medical board license to specify physician. And then there's a new requirement to seek out specialized expertise when needed. I think historically teams have done this quite a bit, actually. But this just formalizes it and explains that we definitely need to be seeking specialized expertise when we need. There's some new areas around individual and guardian involvement. Anytime a strategy that includes chemical restraint, manual, or timeout, it has to be decided among the team how or if the guardian wishes to be notified of the use of restraint. So that's gonna, it just depends upon whether that guardian wants notified each time or, do they just want other information. The provider is also going to maintain a record of the restrictive measures and share that record with the individual or guardian. The individual and guardians have to be notified at least 72 hours in advance of the HRC meeting to review their restrictive measure. An individual can also seek reconsideration of HRC rejection by submitting additional information to the committee within 14 days. And then the individual and guardian can appeal if they do not agree with HRC's decision. For 90-day reviews, there were some changes. We really, the review is including changes in severity or frequency of the behavior. That was some new language, new skills developed by the person. Also an emphasis on the individual's self-report of overall satisfaction. And, are we moving in the right direction? Are we making progress? Really emphasizing how critical that is with all of our work supporting people. Also, when a manual restraint has been used in the last 90 days, that 90-day review has to include the perspective of at least one DSP who was involved in one of the manual restraints, and just getting their input, was there anything that we could have done differently? Human Rights Committee changes. We added a new emergency request process. In addition to the routine request, many across the state already had an emergency approval process. However, we just formalized it. And if you know if you're struggling to get that up off the ground, reach out and we can support you with that. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. Let's see.
And that emergency process is used for things that, for situations in which it is really necessary to get that restrictive measure in place, right? It's not just, we don't want people using it just to, well, we shouldn't use it just because we forgot to put it through last month. So just want to
Good point.
clarify
Good
that.
point. I'm gonna keep moving. Restrictive measure notification, entries are to be made prior to the implementation and also when restrictive measures are discontinued. That was added. Analysis, the annual analysis that's due March 15th. There were a few changes to that. There is, for the in-depth review, you either have to show trends and patterns and how you're reducing, enhancing risk reduction efforts, or you have to do a sample of the implemented strategies of restrictive measures to make sure they meet requirements. And duration and effectiveness of strategies, that's no longer required.
Thank you so much, Heather. I know I put you on the spot, and you can just put that on my list of what I owe you.
I don't mind at all. We're at work. Let's go. We've got work to do, people to help. You can put me on the spot anytime, Jim.
I did want to mention too that there are plans to have a lot of different resources and trainings developed for some specific to some of these changes. For example, like the annual analysis you mentioned, we'll be doing, I believe, a webinar that will come out in the coming months, along with some job aids and other resources. So there will be more to come just to help everyone in the field with some of these changes. Thank you again, Heather. All right. One of the other things we wanted to share, we talked about this again in the video, but the restrictive measure process. Window. There we go. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yeah, we can, Jim.
Okay. So this is a resource we've actually had developed. It's been available for a little while now. I believe it came out near the beginning of this year. And this is really the process that you're going to follow if you have someone with restrictive measures as part of the plan. And so again, this isn't necessarily specific to the OhioISP, but it kind of goes along in conjunction with it, because obviously that's going to be the process that you follow with the OhioISP as well. So as the job aid here references, this is the process you're going to follow, and missing any of these steps or going in a different order could lead to potential citations. So you really want to make sure you're following this order. And we start with assessment of need, as we always do. We start with the assessment, and then the team looks at developing the restrictive measure to address that assessed need. So there obviously is the risk of harm or likelihood of legal sanction that's present. Once the team develops the restrictive measure, obtain informed consent. This one we added as a result of the new behavior support rule. So the individual or guardian is notified of the HRC meeting. So if you have an old version of this resource, you may want to reprint it, because we do have a couple additional revisions to it. So this one, because of the need to notify the individual or guardian, as Heather mentioned, we want to make sure we're doing that. And then the HRC review and approval takes place. Then we submit the restrictive measure notification, and we've had the question of, if with the OhioISP, does this go away? And the answer is no. You're still going to continue to do this as you have. Maybe at some point in the future that will tie in with the OhioISP process, and we'll be able to collect our data differently. But this is still ongoing, and Lindsay Terry Stein is kind of our RMN guru, and so if you have any questions related to that, she should be able to answer those for you. The direct support professionals are trained on the restrictive measures, then they're implemented, and then we have the 90-day review process that is followed. And I just wanted to make sure, everyone's clear, because we see this a lot in accreditation. This involves the full team. We want to make sure we're including the person served and the guardian as part of that 90-day review process as well. So again, this is the process to follow. This is up on both our OhioISP website as well as our behavior support website. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Mandy, did you want to go into the job aid?
Yeah, I sure will. Let me get my screen shared here.
Jim, I have a question.
Yes, please.
When you spoke about the restrictive measure process and about the 90-day review, that review should be documented in notes or a summary of that review needs to be somewhere within the person's file to show that that occurred. What is a recommendation for the documentation?
Yeah, so we don't necessarily have a prescribed format for that, Jackie, but there's obviously requirements that are specified within the new rule, and so you want to make sure you're capturing those. But those could be captured in different ways. I know teams may have their own copy of minutes from their meetings. So they may save and upload those into the OhioISP system. You can also capture those in case notes. Really, there's a lot of different ways you can capture them. Not really a prescribed way. So as long as you're documenting on it that they're occurring and that you're addressing the information in those, I think that'll be sufficient.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Jackie. Any other questions on that? Okay, good question.
Hey, Jim, it's Heidi.
Oh, hi, Heidi.
Hi there. I just wanted to add, like, once a county board or an ICF is using the OhioISP, it would be great to upload your minutes from your 90-day reviews to the person's plan. That way, everything is all in one spot. It's not a requirement, but I feel like it would be a good idea.
Yeah, that's a really good call out. Thanks, Heidi.
Yeah, thank you, Heidi. So can you see my screen, Jim? Okay, awesome. So I pulled up the informed consent job aid that was included in the video. And so this was created just because we kind of wanted to walk through it and wanted to really draw attention that this is a spot to ensure informed consent. So this is not a place to have it be like where all the behavior support information lives. That should really be interwoven throughout the OhioISP still. But this is to make sure the person and or guardian really understand the restrictive measure and what's being in place. Okay, so you'll see the boxes were restrictions identified during the planning process. If you check no, then the other questions here are not applicable. These are to be answered. If you check yes, that means a restriction is in place and you'll answer the other questions, okay? And I know in DODD's system, if you check no, the questions don't even populate, like they're not even an option. So it's very clear that way. And then date of HRC approval, because you need that, remember the process that Jim showed us, you have to have informed consent prior to going to HRC. This is really going to just be that proposed date, that scheduled date when you expect to have the HRC meeting. And you can always go back to change it. So we wanted to draw attention to that. And see what else. And then we had the discussion today, Jim and I, that you would answer each question for each restrictive measure. So you want to address each restrictive measure in each box. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Jim.
Yeah, I do. So I know we've kind of been back and forth, and I think sometimes we're at the mercy of our IT system, you know, and I think this is a case where I think in maybe in past gatherings we may have said things like we expect there to be different forms for different restrictive measures. So say if an individual has multiple restrictive measures, these questions would populate for each restrictive measure. So say one for a manual restraint. If that same person also has a rights restriction, there would also be the ability to create a separate form within the system for that. As of now, we do not have the ability to do that. It is simply just one form. So for a person that does have multiple restrictive measures in place, you would be listing all of those in the same boxes. You can do some different things within the boxes to separate them. Our system does allow for like bullets and different things like that you can kind of clearly define which restrictive measures you're referring to. And we also are going to increase the character limits in this section to 10,000. So there's going to be ample space for everyone to kind of list answers to those questions for each restrictive measure within these boxes. But I know that question has come up. Shout out, Amy. I saw you on here earlier. I know you emailed me about this, and so we did get some clarification on this. So hopefully that's helpful.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim. Yeah, are there any questions about this section? Or any suggestions?
One other thing, Mandy, I did just in talking to one of our IT folks, there was some discussion about there possibly being an enhancement in the future that will allow for multiple restrictive measures to be entered separately with separate questions for each. So I wanted to mention that because that might be something that we add to the system in the future. But for now, this is going to be how we're going to handle it, and we'll certainly let people know if that changes in the future. Okay. I know Mandy shared the behavior support website with everyone earlier. We also have an OhioISP website that I just dropped in the chat. So that is a good reference for folks. We have a ton of information there. Rachel, do you want to speak to maybe some of the stuff that we have on our website, some of the different sections that are there?
Sure. There are lots of great resources. There is a resource tab that has the different job aids. There is a frequently asked questions section. So there's lots of information that's archived in there, but we also are doing a rotating top questions. So those will be changed again in the next few days. But keep a lookout for those as we get questions into the Ohio ISP email inbox. We do like to keep that updated. There are also lots of sample plans, so all kinds of different folks with different abilities, restrictive measures, not restrictive measures, those are all available. There's walk-through videos that sort of explain the online system as well as the Ohio ISP and why the Ohio ISP, as well as some really cool videos from people using the system, individuals who have had plans done within the system, QIDPs, SSAs who have done work in the system.
Thanks, Rachel.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a couple things. So the Rachel mentioned the sample plans. There are several, I'm not sure exactly how many, but we do have several that include restrictive measures. And I think the beauty of the Ohio ISP is that there is some flexibility. It's a standardized plan, but there's also the ability to make the plan person-centered still. So, the work group that developed it, I think, did a really good job of finding that balance. So you'll see those done a little differently in the system, and that's okay. We, as long as you're getting that content in there and you're meeting those rule requirements, there are going to be some different ways that people can do things. I see Aaron in the chat asked about the FAQs, if it was shared out. We do not share those out because it's not just a static document, Aaron. Those are sort of ever changing. And so I think Rachel mentioned on the website that those get updated. We do have a kind of our top, almost like top 10 sort of FAQs that are like present on the site. And then we do have some archived ones that are listed there as well. So we try to update those top FAQs on a monthly basis. So just I guess just a reminder to keep going to the website and checking that out as frequently as you can.
Yeah, and when we do update those, Jem, I just want to draw attention that we do put like a date right under top facts, top FAQs. We put updated on, so it's last updated in September, and then we'll put when it's next updated, so you can just tell very easily that's changed from the last time you saw potentially.
Yeah, and those are really developed from you all. We get lots of questions in our Ohio ISP email that Rachel had alluded to. If you don't have that, Rachel, would you mind dropping that email in the chat for everyone? So we get a lot of questions there. A lot of questions get directed at us as regional support facilitators. So feel free to reach out to us. Heidi, who is one of our regional coordination managers on the east side of the state, and then Lisa Allersmeyer is the regional coordination manager on the west side of the state, and Beth Chambers, who kind of oversees all of the Ohio ISP work.
Jim, I'm also going to put in the chat the interactive map for the regional DODD team, so that if you ever have questions, who's the go-to for your county, it goes over regional coordination and regional support facilitators, but it also includes compliance, cross-system behavioral health, early intervention, all across DODD. So I'll put that in the chat.
Thanks, Mandy. I mentioned Heidi. So this is a nice little segue into our behavior support workshops. Heidi does oversee our statewide behavior support workshops, and those occur on a rotating basis. So we have the statewide and the northern and the southern workshops. So each of those occur would be every 3 months then, right? So we have the statewide, and then it rotates to northern and southern in some sort of pattern. Heidi, I know you're in the car. Do you want to talk a little bit about the statewide? If not, we can, Heather looks like she's ready to jump in there.
Since I am in the car, we will let Heather jump in. Heather and I work together to coordinate them, but right now we are on a statewide, then a southern, then a northern. Eventually, we hope to get back to regional. Go for it, Heather.
And the whole purpose of combining like the northern and the southern was just to increase people's access to the updated rule information. And we wanted it to be monthly and to have continuity just so we could keep the momentum going with building that capacity to understand how to apply all these lovely new requirements. And it's really, we're trying to get them to be a little bit more interactive. So the statewide one is coming up on November 8th, and we're hoping to do some different things just to get everybody talking a little bit more. But if you have the whole purpose, if you have a person that you're struggling to support, those workshops are a great place to go to talk with others who are doing the same work. And I've never seen anybody walk away without getting some new ideas, some fresh perspective on the situation, and being able to reframe it a little bit differently. Doesn't mean the work is easier necessarily, but you're not alone trying to figure it out by yourself. There's quite a network of people across the state doing the same type of challenging work, and just trying to connect people so that we can do our very best when we're serving people. I could go on and on. This is the most fun work I've ever done for DODD, and I love these workshops. They're just, I can't say enough about them. And if you think that we need to improve them, please know that we want to keep it moving forward.
Thanks, Heather.
Sure.
Lori, Justin, do you guys want to talk a little bit about your workshop specifically, and maybe some of the things you guys do as a part of those? Lori, ladies first.
Oh, okay. Well, since Justin and I think our workshops mirror each other pretty closely, so I'm going to end up stealing all his talking points probably. So, yeah, so I love the idea of splitting them up into northern, southern, and state, because like Heather said, once a month we have somewhere we can go to just kind of touch base with our peers. I think they're doing a great job of building a community of practice. So I think that's super important. The links are now in Memo Monday to join the workshops. You don't have to register ahead of time. You can just, look them up and pop in. I think if you're in Northern Ohio, you're welcome to join a Southern Ohio, and vice versa. We had over 400 people in our last statewide workshop in August. So it's very, very well attended. Justin is the agenda master, and I've totally stolen his agenda format. I'm just going to cop to that right now. But I think we have some pretty consistent things on our agendas. So we just had ours a couple weeks ago for Southern Ohio, and we had a section on the new OhioISP and behavior supports and what's that looking for folks, and we're learning that, there's some folks who haven't dove in yet. There's some who are all in, and some who have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. So it's interesting because we're all in different places, and we're all making mistakes with it. We're all learning, we try it one way and realize it works better another way. So I think that helps with the pressure that we put on ourselves sometimes to hear that other folks, have the same kinds of questions that we have. And like Heather had said, we want it to be really interactive, and folks are oftentimes real intimidated to speak up and ask questions, but I would really encourage people. There are no dumb questions. We've worked our way through the planning for these workshops and realized there's things we're not clear on yet. So it's all of us across the field. And this is the way we can get some clarity, by just kind of sharing what we want to learn more about, what we're not quite sure about. So we'll often have on our agenda RMN issues. Lindsay will come and sit in and help us through some of those. And training and resources are always available. I think we had 2 pages of resources for our last workshop. So Justin, what would you like to add?
I think in previous years, we've also done some presentations So we've had different people come in and talk. We've had somebody come in and talk about like Prader-Willi. We've had people come in and talk about different diagnoses or specific topics. We've been more focused in the last half of this year just on this updated rule. And I think I can say probably with great confidence that, in my opinion, the Northern one is probably the best workshop you could attend. But other than that, I think everybody's already mentioned all the kind of the format and how it goes.
I can say, so I've been a part of the Northern one. Justin does a great job. There's a lot of co-facilitators up there that do a great job as well. And then he mentioned that there's people that come in and speak. I know, Justin, you're very receptive to agenda items, and if people have things that they want to discuss or feel like there's a need in the field. I don't know if you guys want to drop like your contact information in the chat, or if there's a way that they can access that. Lori, I've heard great things about the Southern one as well too, and sounds like there's lots of good discussion. I like how open it is. Like you said, people can come in and they can ask questions and not feel like they're they're being looked down upon.
Yeah, I agree. I would say, Justin, that the Southern one was wonderful, just as wonderful as the Northern. So shout outs to the facilitators, though. You guys really bring great energy, and if I found myself leaving them just like feeling rejuvenated and like ready to go, so hopefully we've heard good things across the board from all stakeholders, that they get good information. And so we really encourage you to attend if you have questions or kind of need that energy back in your work. So
I'm just going to add, if you go to the Behavioral Support Strategy webpage, we have a section on the workshops. And if you miss a workshop, but you want the agenda, those will be posted. And if we're going to be doing any trainings, those will always be recorded if we can swing that, just so that people don't miss things, and we're able to get the information out.
Thanks, Heather, Heidi, Lori, Justin, appreciate you all. Any questions on the behavior support workshops that are going on? Again, feel free to unmute and ask, or drop it in the chat. Any general questions? Kind of at the point where we've finished our sort of recap of the video. And again, for those who have watched the video, this might have been a little repetitive, but we wanted to share some of those high points of what was discussed. Does anyone have any questions, concerns? Christina. Is there a way to print out the self-medication assessment separate from the plan? Our nursing department wanted to place this in the medical chart. Yeah, Mandy.
I was just going to ask, is it in the Salesforce system, Christina? Are you trying to print it from there, or? Yes. Okay. Yeah, so you should be able to locate it in files in that person's ISP, and then you should be able to download it from there and print it. And Christina, I can reach out to you after this, then we can make sure that's how it, that it works for you also.
Yeah, the self-medication assessment, so the, all right, she put, it would not show when I was, when, what was marked in the boxes. Okay.
Yeah, let me reach out to you, Christina, because it's kind of separate from like within the plan itself. You have to go in and complete that separate document. And so we can always jump on a Teams call and kind of work through that.
Yeah, and so the file itself, you could find that in the system, or that is also located on our DODD website, so you can also print that separately. But yeah, like Mandy said, that is not something that's built into the OhioISP system right now. That has to be printed and uploaded separately. Good question. Any other questions related to behavior supports or OhioISP? Hey, Nikki, with our old ISPs, we would do separate paper quarterly reviews from our main annual ISP. How do quarterly reviews work with the new OhioISP? Should we still do separate quarterly reviews, or do we make changes to the OhioISP quarterly and get new signatures? Nikki, I assume you're at an ICF. Okay. Yeah, so ICFs are required to do their quarterly reviews, and again, there's not necessarily a prescribed way to do that. If there are things that, as a result of your quarterly reviews, need to be updated in the plan, you would go ahead and make those updates. And then sort of depending on what updates you're making, that would really dictate whether or not you would get new signatures. So if you're adding an outcome or a service as a result, then you would get new signatures, because it's essentially changing the plan. If you're just adding some notes or making nominal changes, then that's something that you wouldn't necessarily need to get new signatures for. As I mentioned earlier, same thing with the 90-day restrictive measure reviews. You can do those separately as your notes or meeting minutes and upload those into the system. So there's several different ways that you can capture it. I think just as long as you're making sure that you're documenting it to meet your role requirements. Is that helpful, Nikki? Rachel, Mandy, anything to add?
Nope, I think you covered it. Thanks.
Some good questions. Anyone else? You guys are all good to go then. I know we got a lot. I know we're throwing a lot of stuff at you. We got the OhioISP rolling out. We got a new behavior support rule. We recognize that you all are doing a lot of work and trying to keep up with everything. So we certainly appreciate all of your time. Mandy, do you want to talk about future gatherings? And then it looks like we're probably going to get some time back.
Yeah, sure. So our plan is to not have gatherings in November and December. We really want to give people time, especially with the holidays, give people time to get systems in place and work through the OhioISP and attend those behavior support workshops, you know, and then in January, we plan to start them back up, but they're going to look a little different. We really want to model them after those behavior support workshops, because there is such great energy and people feel free to ask questions and open up. we'd like to do that. And so we would like to see people bring questions that they have about planning and assessing and monitoring and revising the plans to the gatherings, so that we can work through those with people that are doing the work, as well as having DODD representation there. So be on the lookout. We are working on getting things in order so that we can start them back up in January. So, but feel free in the meantime, look at the resources available on OhioISP behavior support website. Really great resources, and then available. And then, reach out to us. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. We're happy to help, happy to support.
Mandy, we do have a question in the chat. Janice mentions that she's still not confident as to where behavior strategies should be in the plan. What would you recommend?
Yeah, and so it's not just one spot, right? It's all throughout. Anywhere that support impacts the person's life is where it should be reflected. So if it's in regards to communication, you're gonna list information there. If it's in regards to self-care, you'll list information there. And it should all align throughout. So there's not a specific place that you include only behavior support information. It should really all be interwoven.
Heidi?
Hey there. Thank you. Right. So like Mandy said, when you are assessing somebody's needs, it can live all throughout the assessment. But then if somebody is going to require a restriction, that should make it to the summary part for each assessment section, which will then carry over to the plan. You will develop those supports just like you would any other support. Like if it's important to the person, it may become an outcome, right? But if it doesn't, then most likely you will develop it within the paid supports. So all throughout the assessment, we're addressing somebody's assessed need. If it rises to the level of a risk, it makes it to that part of the summary, carries over to the plan, and then depending upon what the support looks like, either a paid support or an outcome. You know, there might be natural supports involved also, but in general, if you have paid providers, it's going to live in one of those two sections of the plan part.
Thanks, Heidi. Sounds like it's raining pretty hard, so please drive safe.
I am, and it is. Thank you.
We don't live in, the southern folks, you guys live in the tropics down there. You probably don't get a whole lot of rain. All right. We do have another question, Allison. Positive supports should go in important 2, important 4 throughout. They can. I think it depends on, again, similar to what Heidi was saying, like depends on what specific positive supports you're talking about, and sort of what parts of the person's life they relate to. We have 7 different assessment sections, and I've always said, like, when we talk about the OhioISP, it's really hard to kind of compartmentalize a person's life into 7 different sections. There's a lot of overlap and different things that can be covered in multiple sections. I think just as long as you find the most appropriate place for those, when you're developing, so when you're going through the assessment, you're answering all of those questions, you're looking at needs and wants in a person's life. That's really going to drive where you go with the planning process. So positive supports kind of develop from those wants and needs, and I guess it just depends on which section you're putting that information in. So like Heidi said, it kind of naturally will interweave itself. Lori, go ahead.
Yeah, I learn best from examples. So just an example of what that could look like where it would not be necessarily an important 2 or 4 is if you have a person who struggles with communication when they're dysregulated or upset, and you want to use the reflect on or connect tool to help have those conversations, then that's going to go into the communication section. So it just kind of takes a holistic view. You have to take a holistic view of the person and where those specific supports might live, just depending on what the particular need is. So
great example.
Yeah, thank you, Lori. And then Jessica mentioned that it might make it to how to support me on the All About Me page that, you know, so you have, like Heidi said, you have your assessment, then it makes it to the important 2 4 summaries, and then you might create your supports from that. And then also even put it on that introduction page.
Yeah, that All About Me or introduction page, we call it different things, but that's sort of that 1-page summary of what's really most important to know about that person. A lot of times providers will use that as a way to just kind of give a quick glimpse of what's really needed for that person to best support them. Some really good questions, really good discussion. Anyone else have anything to add? Where can I find instructions to upload pictures? I don't know that we have, do we have instructions anywhere?
I was wondering if that's a part of Doug's videos. I think that's a part of Doug's video. So let me look at his playlist and I can post it.
Okay. We do have, so it's kind of challenging because we have multiple things in multiple places, but the OhioISP website is going to contain just about anything that you really need related to the OhioISP behavior support strategies website. Again, a lot of stuff related to behavior supports. Some of it contains a little of both. We kind of have them a little interconnected. We also do have a YouTube playlist for DODD. So if you don't have that already, maybe we can drop that in the chat for you all as well.
I just put the playlist in the chat.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mandy. Before we break, I did want to just show the job aid, not my email. Nobody wants to see that. Okay, so this is the job aid that was developed related to the chemical restraint. And this is what we had referenced earlier when Heather was discussing the changes to chemical restraint. So it's got a nice flow chart here. You kind of start from the top and then you go on down the line. So again, this is posted on the Behavior Support Strategies website. Take a look at that and get to your conclusion as to whether or not a medication would qualify as a chemical restraint. And then there's some information on what blunt suppression, because that's sort of the buzzword now, right? Blunt suppression is really what we're looking for. What does that look like and how you can identify that? So again, really good resource for everyone. I know Heidi and Heather took a lot of time to develop that with some of the work group members. So. Anything before we wrap up? Last thoughts? Someone's about to get 21 minutes back in their day. Use it wisely, folks. We do appreciate all you do and everyone's time. Thank you again for being here, and hope to see all of you soon.